I'm standing in my dad's old workshop, holding a letter that just destroyed everything I thought I knew about my family. 3 hours ago, I was Daniel Hayes, the son who never quite measured up. Now I'm holding proof that my brother Marcus and my own mother conspired to steal $2.4 million from me. And the worst part? They almost got away with it. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The morning started like any other Tuesday. I was fixing Mrs. Peterson's fence, my hands already stained with wood stain at 7 a.m. I run a small handyman business here in Millfield. Nothing glamorous, just honest work that pays the bills. My truck radio was playing classic rock when my phone rang. Unknown number, but something told me to answer. The voice on the other end was crisp, professional. "This is Jennifer Walsh from Walsh and Associates. I'm calling regarding the estate of Robert Hayes. Are you Daniel Michael Hayes, son of the deceased? My dad had been gone for 6 months. Cancer took him faster than anyone expected, and honestly, I was still processing the loss. Dad and I weren't close, not like he was with Marcus. My older brother had always been the golden child, the one who went to law school, who lived in the big house across town with his wife Sarah and their twin boys. I was just the guy who showed up to family dinners covered in sawdust, listening to Marcus talk about his latest case, while Mom hung on every word. "Yes, that's me," I said, setting down my sandpaper. "What's this about?" There was a pause. "Mr. Hayes, I need you to come to my office today. There's been a significant development regarding your father's will that requires immediate attention. When can you be here?" I thought the will had been settled months ago. Marcus had handled everything, said Dad left the house to him, and Mom some savings divided between us. Nothing major. I'd received a check for $8,000, which honestly felt about right. Dad was a mechanic his whole life, owned Hayes Auto Repair downtown. Good man, hard worker, but we weren't exactly wealthy. "Can you tell me what this is about?" I asked. "Not over the phone, but Mr. Hayes, I need to stress the urgency. Can you be here by noon?" Something in her tone made my stomach tighten. "Sure, I can be there." The law office was in the nicer part of town, glass and chrome, the kind of place that made my work boots feel extra loud on the polished floors. Jennifer Walsh was maybe 50, silver hair pulled back, the kind of sharp eyes that probably saw through everyone's nonsense. She gestured to a chair across from her desk. "Mr. Hayes, I'm going to be direct because time is critical. Your father came to see me 2 weeks before he passed away. He was concerned about some irregularities in his previous estate planning." "What kind of irregularities?" She opened a thick folder. "Your father's original will, the one probated 6 months ago, was not his final will. This is." She slid a document across the desk. My name jumped out at me from the page, along with numbers that didn't make sense. I read it twice, then a third time. "I don't understand. This says I inherit the auto shop, the investment accounts, and something called Hayes Holdings LLC. What is Hayes Holdings?" Miss Walsh leaned forward. "That's where it gets interesting. Your father didn't just own a repair shop, Mr. Hayes. 3 years ago, he purchased the land underneath Miller's shopping plaza. He also owned 4 rental properties downtown and had been quietly investing in local businesses. Hayes Holdings was his way of organizing these assets." My head was spinning. Dad owned Miller's Plaza. That was the biggest shopping center in town. The rental income alone would be... How much are we talking about? The total estate value is approximately $2.6 million. I sat back hard in the chair. "That's impossible. My brother said Dad left everything to him, and Mom except for a few thousand for me." Miss Walsh's expression darkened. "About that. Your brother presented a will to the probate court 6 months ago. I've compared it to this one. The signatures don't match." She pulled out another document. "This was the will submitted for probate. Notice the date and your father's signature." Then she placed my copy next to it. "This will is dated 2 weeks later and was properly witnessed and notarized. The signatures were different. Not dramatically, but enough that once you saw them side by side, it was obvious. Someone forged the first will. That would be my assessment. Your father specifically came to me because he suspected someone in the family was planning to contest his wishes. He was very clear about his intentions. He wanted you to have the business assets. Why me? I mean, Marcus is the lawyer. He understands all this stuff. She smiled for the first time since I'd arrived. Your father said you were the only one who never asked him for money. Said you worked for everything you had, and that's the kind of person who should be trusted with wealth. I stared at the papers, trying to process what this meant. If this is real, then Marcus committed fraud. Yes, and Mr. Hayes, there's more. I've been tracking the accounts. Significant withdrawals have been made over the past 6 months. Money has been moved, assets transferred. We need to act quickly. The room felt like it was tilting. My brother, the successful lawyer, had stolen my inheritance and convinced our mother to go along with it. The same brother who gave the eulogy at Dad's funeral, talking about family values and Dad's legacy. What do I need to do? First, we file an emergency motion to freeze all estate assets. Second, we notify the district attorney's office about the suspected forgery. Third, we prepare for war, because your family isn't going to take this lying down. I thought about Mom, about family dinners, about Marcus's kids calling me Uncle Danny. What happens to them when this comes out? Miss Walsh's voice softened slightly. Mr. Hayes, I understand this is difficult, but your father trusted you with this for a reason. The question is, do you trust him? I looked at the will again, at Dad's real signature, shaky from his illness but unmistakably his. I remembered the last conversation we'd had, when he was weak but insisted on talking privately. He'd grabbed my hand and said something I hadn't understood at the time. He'd said, Danny, sometimes the person who deserves something is the last person who'd ask for it. Remember that. I thought he was talking about forgiveness or love. Now I realized he was talking about money. Yes, I said. I trust him. What's the first step? Within an hour, we'd filed the emergency motion. By 3 p.m., I was sitting in the district attorney's office, giving a statement to Detective Rivera about potential forgery and fraud. By 5 p.m., the story had shifted from a simple estate dispute to a criminal investigation. I drove home in a daze, my phone already buzzing with missed calls. Marcus had been notified about the asset freeze. The calls were from him, from Mom, from numbers I didn't recognize. I didn't answer any of them. My house is small, a 2-bedroom I bought 5 years ago when I finally had enough saved for a down payment. It's nothing fancy, but it's mine. I sat on my porch steps, looking at the street where I'd grown up, trying to understand how everything had changed in a single day. The first call I returned was to my best friend Jake, who I'd known since high school. He worked construction and understood the value of honest work. Danny, what the hell is going on? Jake asked without preamble. Marcus called me looking for you. Said there was some misunderstanding about your dad's will. No misunderstanding, I said, and told him everything. When I finished, Jake was quiet for a long moment. 2.4 million. Your dad was loaded, apparently, and Marcus knew it. That explains why he was so eager to handle everything after the funeral. Remember how he wouldn't let you help with any of the paperwork? I remembered. Marcus had insisted on handling all the legal matters, said it was too complicated for someone without legal training. Mom had agreed, said it was wonderful that Marcus was taking care of everything, so I didn't have to worry about it. The second call I made was the hardest one. I called Mom. Danny. She answered on the first ring. Marcus said you were causing trouble with some lawyer. What's this nonsense about challenging your father's will? The hurt in her voice was real, but so was the defensiveness. She'd known. Maybe not the details, but she'd known something wasn't right. Mom, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest. Did you see Dad's original will before he died? There was a pause. Marcus handled all of that legal business. You know I don't understand those complicated documents. But did you see it? Did Dad ever talk to you about what he was leaving to whom? Another pause, longer this time. Danny, your father was very sick at the end. He wasn't always thinking clearly. That's not what I asked. Look, she said, her voice getting sharper, Marcus worked hard to get where he is. He went to school, built a practice, married well. It makes sense that your father would leave the business to someone who understands business, so you did know. I knew your father wanted to take care of his family. All of his family. The careful way she said it told me everything. She'd known Dad planned to leave me more than $8,000, and she'd let Marcus change it. Mom, Dad's real will left me the auto shop and the investment properties. Marcus forged a fake will to steal it. The line went quiet for so long I thought she'd hung up. Danny, she said finally, that's a very serious accusation against your brother. It's not an accusation, it's what happened. I think you need to be very careful about listening to lawyers who are just trying to stir up trouble for their own profit. Miss,
Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time. So if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story.
Walsh isn't charging me anything unless we recover the assets. Money changes people, Danny. I don't want to see it change you. The conversation ended badly, with her hanging up after telling me I was making a mistake I'd regret. Within an hour, Marcus finally reached me. Danny, he said, without preamble, we need to talk. This lawyer is filling your head with lies. Which part is a lie, Marcus? The forged signature or the $2.4 million you've been spending? You don't understand the complexities of estate law. There were tax implications, business considerations. I was protecting the assets by transferring them into your name. There was silence on his end. Finally he said, meet me tomorrow morning at Mom's house. We can work this out as a family. The family that's been lying to me for 6 months. Danny, I'm trying to help you here. If you keep pushing this, people are going to get hurt. Is that what you want? The threat was subtle but clear. Back down or face the consequences. I'll see you tomorrow, I said, and hung up. That evening I sat in Dad's workshop behind the house. He'd taught me to use tools here, to fix things, to work with my hands. The space still smelled like motor oil and sawdust. I found myself looking through his old toolbox, touching the wrenches that had built his business, his life. In the bottom drawer of his workbench, I found something I'd never seen before. A manila envelope with my name written on it in Dad's handwriting. Inside was a letter dated just a week before he died. Danny, it started, if you're reading this, then something has happened to the official will I left with Miss Walsh. I hoped it wouldn't come to this, but I've been watching your brother closely these past months, and I'm worried. Marcus has been asking a lot of questions about my finances, about the business, about my investments. He doesn't know I know about his gambling problem or about the money he owes some very serious people in the city. I think he's counting on inheriting everything to solve his problems. That hit me like a punch to the gut. Marcus had a gambling problem. I'd never seen any sign of it. The letter continued. I need you to understand why I'm leaving you the business. It's not because I love you more than Marcus, though I'm proud of the man you've become. It's because you're the only one I trust to do the right thing with it. Marcus sees dollar signs. You see responsibility. If something has gone wrong with the will, fight for it. Not because of the money, but because it's what I wanted. And Danny, be careful. Desperate people do desperate things, and your brother is more desperate than you know. I love you, son. Dad, I sat in the workshop until after midnight, reading the letter over and over. My brother wasn't just greedy. He was in trouble, the kind that made people disappear. And he'd stolen my inheritance to pay off his debts to dangerous people. The next morning, I drove to Mom's house with a hollow feeling in my chest. The 2-story colonial, where I'd grown up, looked smaller than I remembered, but still tidy, still respectable. Marcus's BMW was already in the driveway. I found them in the kitchen, Mom making coffee with shaking hands, Marcus pacing by the window. He looked like he hadn't slept. His usually perfect hair was disheveled, his expensive suit wrinkled. "Danny," Mom said without looking at me, "I made your favorite, blueberry pancakes." It felt surreal, like we were playing house while the foundation crumbled beneath us. Marcus stopped pacing. "We need to settle this quickly and quietly. I'll write you a check for $50,000. You drop the legal action, we all move on." $50,000 from a $2.4 million estate. His jaw tightened. "The business has debts you don't know about, legal complications. By the time everything is settled, there won't be much left anyway." "That's not what Miss Walsh says." Miss Walsh is a small-town lawyer looking to make a name for herself. "She's using you." Mom set a plate in front of me, her hands trembling slightly. "Maybe we should all just take what we have and be grateful," she said quietly. I looked at her, this woman who'd raised me, who'd taught me right from wrong, who was now asking me to accept theft as gratitude. "Mom, I found Dad's letter, in his workshop. He knew this might happen." Her face went white. Marcus stopped moving entirely. "What letter?" I pulled it from my jacket pocket. Marcus lunged for it, but I held it away from him. "Stay back," I said, standing up. The chair scraped against the floor, loud in the sudden silence. "You can't prove that's real," Marcus said, but his voice had lost its lawyer's confidence. I read the relevant part aloud, about Marcus's gambling debts and the dangerous people he owed. Mom sank into her chair like she'd been shot. "Marcus," she whispered, "is that true?" He didn't answer immediately. When he did, his voice was different, smaller. It got out of hand. "I had a few bad months, made some poor choices, but I'm handling it." "How much?" I asked. "That's not your concern." $2.4 million worth of concern. Mom looked between us, realization dawning in her eyes. "Marcus, did you change your father's will?" Marcus's face cycled through several expressions: anger, fear, resignation, and finally, something like relief. "Dad was going to ruin everything," he said quietly. "He was going to leave the business to Danny, who doesn't understand the first thing about managing assets that size. The money would have been wasted." Mom's voice was barely a whisper. "You forged your father's signature. I protected our family's interests. Danny would have lost everything within a year." I felt something cold and final settle in my chest. This wasn't just about money anymore. This was about everything I'd believed about my family, about my place in it, about who I could trust. "I'm not dropping the legal action," I said. Marcus's face hardened. "Danny, you have no idea what you're getting into. The people I borrowed from, they don't accept payment plans. If this money disappears back into probate, if it gets tied up in courts for years." He didn't finish the sentence, but the implication was clear. His problems would become everyone's problems. "That's not my fault," I said. "It will be when they come looking for someone to blame." Mom was crying now, quiet tears running down her cheeks. "How did we get here?" she asked. "No one in particular. We got here because Marcus made choices," I said. "Bad choices that he's trying to make everyone else pay for." I walked toward the door. Mom caught my arm as I passed. "Danny, please. He's still your brother." I looked at her, at the woman who'd known what Marcus had done and chosen to protect him anyway, who'd let me believe I was worth $8,000 when my father had tried to leave me a legacy. "He stopped being my brother the day he forged Dad's name," I said. Outside, I sat in my truck for a long time before starting the engine. My phone was buzzing with texts from Marcus, alternating between threats and pleas. I deleted them without reading most of them. The next few days were a blur of legal meetings, depositions and phone calls. Miss Walsh worked quickly, and the evidence was overwhelming. The forensic analysis of the signatures was conclusive. The fake will was clearly forged, and not even particularly well. But Marcus had been busy too. Someone had broken into my truck while I was in a client's house, searching through my glove compartment and under the seats. Nothing was taken, but the message was clear. Someone was watching me. The break-in happened on a Thursday. Friday morning, I found Jake waiting by my truck when I came out for coffee. "We need to talk," he said, his face grim. We drove to the diner downtown, the same place where Dad used to take me for breakfast on Saturdays when I was a kid. Jake waited until we were in a back booth before he spoke. "I heard some things last night," he said quietly, "about Marcus and some guys from the city." "What kind of things?" "The kind that make people disappear, Danny. Word is he owes close to $300,000 to a loan shark named Vincent Torino. These aren't the kind of people who care about family dynamics." My coffee suddenly tasted like ash. "You think they'd come after me?" "I think they'd come after anyone standing between them and their money. And right now, that's you." The weight of it hit me all at once. This wasn't just about inheritance anymore. Marcus hadn't just stolen money. He'd borrowed it from people who collected debts with baseball bats and shallow graves. And now I was the obstacle preventing him from paying them back. "Maybe I should just take his $50,000 offer," I said. Jake shook his head. "Danny, if you back down now, you'll never forgive yourself. Your dad trusted you with this for a reason. What if that reason gets me killed? Then you make sure it doesn't, but you don't let fear make your decisions for you." That afternoon I met with Detective Rivera again. He was a small dark man with tired eyes who looked like he'd seen every kind of human stupidity at least twice. "Mr. Hayes," he said, "we've been investigating your brother's finances. The picture that's emerging isn't pretty." He showed me bank records, credit card statements and casino receipts. Marcus had been gambling heavily for almost 2 years. What started as weekend poker games had escalated to high-stakes casino trips and private games with serious money. "He owes several people significant amounts," Rivera continued. "Some of them have criminal records. We're concerned about your safety." "What does that mean?" "Exactly. It means we think you should consider protective custody while this case moves forward." The idea of hiding from my own family felt surreal. But looking at the evidence spread across Rivera's desk, I realized I wasn't dealing with family anymore. I was dealing with criminals. "I'll think about it," I said. "Don't think too long. These people don't usually give advance warning." I drove home through familiar streets that suddenly felt foreign and dangerous. Every car that followed me for more than a block made me nervous. Every shadow in my rearview mirror could be a threat. At home I double-checked all my locks and closed all the blinds.
I called Miss Walsh to update her on the developments. "This complicates things," she said, "but it doesn't change the legal facts. The will was forged. The estate was stolen. The question is whether you're willing to see this through, despite the risks." "What would you do?" I asked. "I'd fight," she said, without hesitation. "But I'm not the one who has to live with the consequences." That evening, I sat in Dad's workshop again, holding his letter, trying to understand what he'd really left me. Not just money or property, but a choice. A test of character that would define who I was and who I was going to become. The phone rang. Unknown number again, but this time the voice was different, rougher, with a city accent. "Daniel Hayes." "Yes. My name is Vincent Torino. I think we need to have a conversation about your brother's debt." The blood drained from my face. "I don't know anything about that. Maybe not yet. But you're about to meet me tomorrow, at Riverside Park, noon. Come alone." The line went dead. I sat staring at the phone, my hands shaking. In less than a week, I'd gone from fixing fences to being threatened by loan sharks. All because my father had trusted me with an inheritance my brother had stolen to feed his gambling addiction. I could still take Marcus's offer, $50,000, and walk away. Let him deal with Vincent Torino and the consequences of his choices. Go back to my small life
and pretend none of this had ever happened. But as I looked around Dad's workshop, at the tools he'd used to build something from nothing, at the letter where he'd trusted me to do the right thing, I knew I couldn't walk away. Not from the money. Money I could live without. But from the principle, from the truth, from the man my father had raised me to be. I had a choice to make, and I had until noon tomorrow to make it. Vincent Torino was waiting for an answer, Marcus was waiting for me to fold, and Mom was waiting for her family to tear itself apart. But Dad wasn't waiting for anything anymore. He'd already made his choice when he wrote that will, when he trusted me with his legacy, when he bet everything on the belief that doing right mattered more than staying safe. Tomorrow, I'd find out if he was right. The morning came too fast. I'd barely slept, every sound outside making me jump. By 11:30, I was driving toward Riverside Park, my hands gripping the steering wheel tight enough to leave marks. I'd made my decision sometime around 3 a.m., staring at the ceiling of my bedroom. I wasn't backing down, but I also wasn't going in blind. I'd called Detective Rivera before dawn, told him about the meeting. He wanted to wire me up, have backup nearby, but I convinced him that would only make things worse. Instead, we agreed on a compromise. I'd wear a small recording device, and plainclothes officers would be positioned around the park at a distance. Riverside Park was mostly empty on a Tuesday afternoon. A few joggers, some kids on bikes, an elderly woman feeding ducks by the pond. I found Vincent Torino sitting alone on a bench near the water, reading a newspaper like he didn't have a care in the world. He was smaller than I'd expected, maybe 5'8", wearing a simple grey suit that probably cost more than my truck. His hair was silver at the temples, and he had the kind of face that could disappear in a crowd. The only thing that gave him away was his eyes, cold and calculating, the eyes of someone who'd made peace with violence a long time ago. I sat down on the other end of the bench, leaving space between us. "Daniel Hayes," he said without looking up from his paper, "you look like your old man. I knew Bobby back in the day. You knew my father. Different circles then. He was straight, I was flexible, but we understood each other." He folded the newspaper and set it aside. "Your brother, however, is neither straight nor smart. Marcus owes you money. Marcus owes me $340,000 plus interest. At this point, we're approaching $500,000. I felt my stomach drop. That was twice what Jake had heard. "Here's my problem, Daniel. Your brother promised to pay me with his inheritance. Said his old man was loaded, just had to wait for nature to take its course. Crude way to put it, but realistic. But Dad didn't leave him the money. No, he didn't. Left it to you, which creates what you might call a complication." Torino stood up, straightened his jacket, and started walking along the path. I followed, keeping my distance. Now I could collect from Marcus in traditional ways. He continued conversationally. "But Marcus is a lawyer, has connections, makes noise, bad for business. You, on the other hand, you're just a handyman. Nobody important. Easier target. I'm not giving you my inheritance." He stopped walking and turned to face me. "That's unfortunate. Because Marcus already promised it to me. Signed papers and everything. Course, he didn't actually have the right to promise it, but that's a detail we can work around." "What kind of papers?" Torino reached into his jacket and pulled out a folded document. I recognized Marcus's signature at the bottom, along with an official-looking seal. "Your brother took out what we call a bridge loan 6 months ago, used his expected inheritance as collateral. Now that inheritance is legally mine, until the debt is satisfied." I looked at the document. It was complex, full of legal language I didn't understand, but the numbers were clear. Marcus had borrowed against money that was never his to begin with. "This isn't legal," I said. "He couldn't use my inheritance as collateral." Torino smiled for the first time, a cold expression that didn't reach his eyes. "You'd be surprised what's legal when you know the right lawyers and file the right paperwork. Your brother's gambling problem made him very cooperative.
We started walking again. I could see one of Rivera's officers about 50 yards away, pretending to read on another bench. But I'm a reasonable man, Daniel. I don't want to hurt anyone unnecessarily. So here's my offer. You transfer the inheritance to me. I cancel Marcus's debt. Everyone goes home happy. And if I don't, then I start collecting in other ways. Marcus first, then his family, then you. The order might vary depending on who's most accessible at any given time. The threat was delivered in the same conversational tone he'd used to discuss the weather. Sarah and the twins, Marcus's wife and children, weren't even involved in this, but they'd become targets because of his stupidity. How do I know you'll stop with the money? What's to prevent you from coming back for more? Torino stopped beside a memorial bench and sat down. I remained standing, because I'm a businessman, not a psychopath. I want my money plus reasonable interest. Once I have that, we never see each other again. I've got bigger fish to fry than small-town handymen. I need time to think. You have until Friday. That's 3 days. After that, I start applying pressure, and trust me, you don't want to experience my motivational techniques. He stood up, handed me a business card with just a phone number on it, and walked away. No dramatic threats, no movie villain speeches, just a businessman concluding a meeting. I sat on the bench for another 20 minutes, trying to process what had just happened. My inheritance wasn't just money anymore. It was a life insurance policy for my brother's family, and possibly my own. Rivera found me there. How'd it go? He asked, sitting down beside me. He's not what I expected, meaning he's smart, professional, not some street thug I can reason with or scare off. He's got legal documents, he knows exactly what he's doing, and he's willing to hurt innocent people to get what he wants. We can arrest him for extortion. Based on what? A recording where he offered to forgive my brother's debt in exchange for money that's legally mine. His lawyers would have him out in hours. Rivera was quiet for a moment. What are you going to do? I don't know yet. But I did know. I just wasn't ready to admit it to anyone else. Maybe not even to myself. That evening, I drove to Marcus's house for the first time in months. It was in Millfield's nicer neighborhood, a 2-story colonial with a perfectly manicured lawn and Sarah's minivan in the driveway. The twins' bikes were scattered on the front walk. Sarah answered the door. She looked tired, older than her 32 years, with dark circles under her eyes that suggested she wasn't sleeping well. "Danny," she said, surprised, "Marcus isn't home yet. I'm here to see you actually. We need to talk." She led me into the kitchen, offered coffee I didn't want, and sat across from me at the breakfast table where I'd eaten countless family dinners over the years. "Sarah, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest. Do you know about Marcus's gambling?" Her face went white, but she didn't deny it. "How long have you known?" "I just found out yesterday." "But you've known for a while, haven't you?" She started to cry, quietly, like she'd had practice. 6 months, maybe longer. I found credit card statements, ATM withdrawals from the casino. When I confronted him, he promised he'd stop. Did he stop? The tears came harder. No. It got worse. He started taking overnight trips to Atlantic City, then longer trips to Las Vegas, said it was for work. But I found plane tickets, hotel receipts. "Sarah, do you know how much money he's lost?" She shook her head. "He won't tell me. But last month, he tried to take out a second mortgage on the house without telling me. The bank called me to verify. That's how I found out. It's bad, Sarah, really bad." I told her everything. The forged will, the stolen inheritance, Vincent Torino and his $500,000 debt. By the time I finished, she was sobbing. "The twins are going to lose their home, aren't they?" She whispered. "Not if I can help it." What does that mean? I was still figuring that out, but I couldn't leave her with no hope. "It means I'm not going to let Marcus's mistakes hurt you and the kids." Marcus came home while we were still talking. He walked into the kitchen, saw Sarah's tears and my presence, and immediately understood.
You told her, he said flatly. She had a right to know. You had no right to terrify my wife with worst-case scenarios. Which part was the worst-case scenario? I asked. The forged will, the gambling debt, or the loan shark who threatened to hurt your family? Marcus's face cycled through several emotions before settling on defeated anger. You don't understand the pressure I've been under. The cases weren't coming in like they used to. The overhead on the practice was crushing me, and I thought I could fix it all with a few good wins. So you stole Dad's money to gamble with. I borrowed against my inheritance to invest in opportunities. That's not what Vincent Torino calls it. Marcus went very still. You met with him? Yesterday. He's giving me until Friday to transfer my inheritance to him, or he starts hurting people. Sarah looked between us, her face pale. Who is Vincent Torino? Marcus sat down heavily, his head in his hands. He's the man I borrowed money from when the banks wouldn't give me any more credit. How much money? Sarah demanded. Marcus looked up at her with eyes that held no hope. Almost $500,000 now with interest. Sarah stood up so fast her chair fell over. $500,000? Marcus, how could you lose $500,000? It started small, he said quietly. Just a few thousand to get back on my feet. But when you're behind, you have to bet bigger to get even. It's basic math. It's basic stupidity, I said. And now your wife and kids are paying for it. Marcus's anger flared. Don't you dare blame me for protecting my family. I was trying to build something, create security for them. By forging Dad's signature, by stealing money that was never yours, by using resources that should have been shared equally. Dad always favored you anyway. The old resentment was still there, even in the face of everything that had happened. Marcus genuinely believed he deserved Dad's money more than I did, despite the fact that he'd stolen it to feed a gambling addiction. Sarah was staring at her husband like she'd never seen him before. You forged your own father's will. The legal documents were outdated, Marcus said defensively. Dad's intentions weren't clear. I was protecting everyone's interests. By lying to everyone, including me, I was handling a complex situation in the best way I knew how. I stood up. Sarah, pack a bag for you and the kids. You're not safe here. Where would we go? My place temporarily. It's not much, but it's far enough from here to give us time to figure this out. Marcus stood up too. You're not taking my family anywhere. Your family is in danger because of your choices, I said. I'm trying to keep them alive. You're overreacting. Vincent's not going to hurt innocent people over money. I stared at him. You really believe that? The man you borrowed $500,000 from is just going to forget about it. If he can't collect, he'll work something out. He's a businessman. He's a criminal, Marcus. And you made a deal with him using money that wasn't yours to promise. The argument continued for another 20 minutes, but Sarah made the decision for all of us. She went upstairs and started packing suitcases for herself and the twins. Marcus tried to stop her, but she'd reached some internal breaking point. Don't touch me, she said when he reached for her arm. Don't talk to me. Don't even look at me right now. The twins Tommy and Jake were confused but cooperative. They were 8 years old, too young to understand why Mommy was crying and why Uncle Danny was helping them pack their toys in boxes. By 9 p.m., Sarah and the boys were in my guest bedroom, trying to make sense of how their lives had fallen apart in a single afternoon. I called Miss Walsh from my kitchen while Sarah put the kids to bed. The situation's escalated, I told her. I've got my brother's family staying here because they're not safe at home. Danny, this is getting dangerous. Maybe we should consider negotiating with this Torino person. What kind of negotiation? Partial payment. Enough to buy us time while the criminal case against Marcus moves forward. How partial? She was quiet for a moment. He might accept half, maybe 600,000. I don't have 600,000 in cash.
The inheritance is mostly tied up in property and business assets. Then we'd need to liquidate something quickly. The auto shop, maybe one of the rental properties. The auto shop was Dad's life's work. The idea of selling it to pay Marcus's gambling debt felt like desecrating his grave. Let me think about it. Don't think too long. If Torino starts applying pressure, innocent people could get hurt. After I hung up, I found Sarah sitting on my couch, staring at nothing. "I don't know how I missed it," she said quietly. "The signs were all there. The mood swings, the secretiveness, the money disappearing from our accounts. You trusted him. That's not a character flaw. I enabled him. Every time he said he was working late, every time he claimed a trip was for business, I chose to believe him because the truth was too scary to face. Sarah, this isn't your fault, isn't it? If I'd confronted him sooner, maybe we could have stopped it before it got this bad. Or maybe he would have just gotten better at hiding it." She looked at me with tired eyes. "What happens now? Now I try to figure out how to keep you and the kids safe while dealing with Vincent Torino. Are you going to give him the money?" The question I'd been avoiding. "I don't know. But you're considering it." "I'm considering what Dad would want me to do. And I don't think he'd want Marcus's children to suffer for their father's mistakes." That night, I couldn't sleep again. I kept thinking about Dad's letter, about his trust in me to do the right thing. But what was the right thing when doing right meant rewarding wrong? At 2 a.m., my phone rang. Unknown number. "Answer it." A voice said, "No introduction, no pleasantries. This is Daniel. Change of plans. You have until tomorrow night, not Friday." "Tomorrow's Wednesday." "You said Friday." "I said Friday before I learned about your house guests. Bringing Marcus's family into this shows poor judgment. Makes me think you might try something stupid. I moved them here to keep them safe. You moved them there to complicate my collection efforts. But it won't work. I know where you live, Daniel. I know your routines, your clients, your favorite diner. 24 hours. The line went dead. I sat in my kitchen staring at the phone, realizing that I'd made a crucial mistake. By trying to protect Sarah and the kids, I'd actually put them in more danger. Now Torino knew exactly where to find all of us at once. I called Detective Rivera, even though it was the middle of the night. He answered on the second ring. "Hayes, what's wrong?" "Torino moved up the deadline. We have less than 24 hours. Where are you now?" "At my house. Sarah and the kids are here. That was a mistake. You've given him multiple targets in one location." I realized that. What do I do now? We need to move fast. Can you get them somewhere safe? Somewhere he won't think to look. I thought about it. Sarah's sister lived 2 hours away in a different county. We could drive there tonight. Do it. And Daniel, after you get them settled, you need to make a decision about that inheritance. This thing is escalating faster than anyone expected. I woke Sarah up and explained the situation. She didn't argue, just started packing again while I woke up Tommy and Jake. Within an hour, we were on the road. Sarah's sister Lisa lived in a small town called Pine Ridge, far enough from Millfield to provide some safety. Lisa was divorced, worked as a nurse, and had enough backbone to handle an emergency. She took one look at Sarah's face and the children's confused expressions and asked only one question. "How long do you need?" "I don't know," I said honestly. "Maybe a few days, maybe longer. Then you stay as long as necessary." I drove back to Millfield as the sun was coming up, my mind racing through possibilities. I could liquidate enough assets to pay Torino, but that would reward Marcus's theft and leave Dad's legacy in ruins. I could refuse to pay and hope the police could protect everyone, but Torino had already shown he was smarter and more patient than the average criminal. Or there was a third option, one that had been growing in the back of my mind since yesterday. It was risky, probably illegal, and definitely dangerous. But it might be the only way to end this without sacrificing everything Dad had worked for. I called Jake and asked him to meet me at the auto shop. Dad's business was exactly as he'd left it, down to the coffee cup still sitting on his desk. The smell of motor oil and metal shavings brought back memories of Saturday mornings spent here as a kid, learning to use tools and fix things. Jake arrived 20 minutes later. "You look like hell," he said. "I feel worse. Listen, I need to ask you something, and you can say no." "What is it?" "I'm going to make a deal with Vincent Torino, but not the deal he's expecting." Jake sat down on a workbench. "I'm listening." "Torino thinks he's dealing with a scared handyman who'll give him whatever he wants to avoid trouble. But what if he's actually dealing with someone who knows exactly how much Marcus owes, who has access to the money, and who's willing to make a different kind of arrangement?" "What kind of arrangement?" "Instead of giving him my inheritance to cover Marcus's debt, I pay him directly. Same amount, but with conditions."
"Such as, Marcus doesn't get off the hook. He still owes me the money with interest. And if he ever gambles again, the deal is void and I tell everyone exactly what kind of man Vincent Torino really is." Jake was quiet for a long moment. "You're talking about going into business with a loan shark. I'm talking about taking control of the situation instead of being a victim of it. Danny, this is dangerous territory. What if he doesn't go for it? Then I'm no worse off than I am now. But at least I'll have tried to find a solution that doesn't involve destroying Dad's legacy or letting Marcus off the hook for what he's done." "And what about the forgery charges? The criminal case that moves forward regardless? Marcus still committed fraud, and he still needs to face consequences for that." Jake shook his head. "This is either brilliant or completely insane, probably both. But it's the only plan I've got that doesn't involve rewarding Marcus for stealing from Dad." "What do you need from me?" "I need someone to know what I'm doing, in case things go wrong. And I need you to make sure Sarah and the kids stay safe, no matter what happens to me." Jake stood up and extended his hand. "You've got it. That afternoon I called Vincent Torino's number. Mr. Torino, this is Daniel Hayes. I'd like to discuss the terms of our arrangement." "I'm listening. I'll pay Marcus's debt, but not the way you're expecting. I want to meet with you tonight to discuss specifics." There was a pause. "You have my attention." "Where and when?" "The auto shop on Main Street. 9 p.m. Come alone." "Mr. Hayes, I don't think you're in a position to make demands." "I'm not making demands. I'm making an offer, one that I think will be more profitable for you in the long run." Another pause. 9 p.m. "If this is some kind of setup, you'll regret it." "It's not a setup, it's a business proposition." I spent the rest of the afternoon preparing. I gathered all the financial documents related to the inheritance, researched everything I could find about Vincent Torino and his business operations, and made several phone calls to set up what I hoped would be insurance against things going wrong. At 8:30, I was sitting in Dad's office waiting for the most important negotiation of my life. Everything I'd inherited, everything Dad had trusted me with, and the safety of my brother's family, all depended on convincing a dangerous criminal that my plan was better than his. Vincent Torino arrived exactly at 9 p.m., alone as agreed. He looked around the shop with professional interest, taking note of the equipment, the layout, the potential exits. "Interesting place to meet," he said. "Your father built this, from the ground up, started with one bay and a dream. The American dream. Admirable. Now what's this proposition of yours?" I gestured to the chair across from Dad's desk. Torino sat down, his expression patient but alert. "Marcus owes you money he doesn't have," I began. "I have money he's not entitled to. Simple math says we should be able to work something out. I already offered you that deal." "No, you offered to take my inheritance in exchange for forgiving Marcus's debt." "I'm offering to loan you money against Marcus's future earnings, with him as collateral." Torino leaned back in his chair. "Interested?" "Explain." I pay you the full amount Marcus owes, plus reasonable interest. In return, you transfer his debt to me. He becomes my problem, not yours. And why would I want to do that? Because I can pay you immediately, in full with certified funds. No collection efforts, no violence, no risk of law enforcement attention. Clean transaction. Everyone walks away satisfied. Except Marcus. Marcus made his choice when he forged Dad's will. Now he lives with the consequences. Torino was quiet for a long moment, considering what's to stop him from declaring bankruptcy and walking away from the debt to you. The same thing that would stop him from walking away from you, but with one difference. I know where he lives, where he works, where his kids go to school. I'm family. I can apply pressure in ways that won't attract police attention. You're talking about destroying your own brother. I'm talking about holding him accountable for his actions. There's a difference. Torino smiled, the first genuine expression I'd seen from him. You're more interesting than I gave you credit for, Daniel. But there's one problem with your plan. What's that? You're assuming I want Marcus to succeed, to eventually pay off his debt and move on with his life. But the truth is, men like your brother are valuable as examples. Other people see what happens to gamblers who don't pay their debts, and it keeps them honest. So you'd rather keep him in debt forever than collect the money. I'd rather collect the money and keep him as a cautionary tale, but your plan might work for everyone involved, with one modification. I'm listening. You pay me what he owes, plus 20% for the inconvenience of changing arrangements. Marcus's debt transfers to you, but with a twist. He doesn't know about our agreement. As far as he's concerned, he still owes me the money. That seems unnecessarily complicated. It serves several purposes. First, it keeps him motivated to find ways to pay, which means he'll keep working instead of giving up. Second, it maintains my reputation for collecting debts. Third, it gives you leverage over him that he doesn't even know you have. I thought about it. The plan was more complex than I'd intended, but it accomplished my goals while giving Torino what he wanted. What about interest? He pays you whatever rate you set. I don't care about that part of it, as long as I get my money, and if he finds out about our arrangement, then the deal is void and his debt reverts to me, with penalties for the deception. I extended my hand across the desk. Mr. Torino, I think we have a deal. He shook it, his grip firm and dry. Pleasure doing business with you, Daniel. I think your father would be proud. I wasn't sure about that, but I was sure that Dad would approve of me taking control of the situation instead of being a victim of it. The financial transfer took place the next morning at a downtown bank. I liquidated one of the rental properties and used the proceeds to pay Torino $450,000 in certified funds. In return, he provided me with legal documents transferring Marcus's debt, along with copies of all the original loan agreements. By noon, Vincent Torino was no longer my problem. Marcus was. I drove to his law office that afternoon. He was meeting with a client, but his secretary said he could see me when he was finished. The waiting area was all dark wood and leather, the kind of place designed to make clients feel like they were getting expensive advice. Family photos on Marcus's desk showed him and Sarah at happier times, the twins as babies, vacation trips to places they probably couldn't afford. When his client left, Marcus came out of his office looking haggard. His expensive suit was wrinkled, his usually perfect hair disheveled. "Danny," he said, surprised, "what are you doing here? We need to talk about your debt situation. If this is about Vincent, I'm handling it. I just need a little more time." "Actually, you're not handling it anymore." "I am." Marcus stared at me, confused. "What does that mean?" "It means Vincent Torino is no longer your problem. I paid him off yesterday." The relief that washed over Marcus's face was immediate and overwhelming. He actually staggered a little, catching himself against the doorframe. "You paid him, all of it, every penny, plus interest and penalties. Danny, I don't know how to thank you. I know we've had our differences,
But this don't thank me yet. You still owe the money. You just owe it to me now instead of him. The relief disappeared as quickly as it had come. What? $450,000, Marcus. Plus interest at 15% annually. First payment is due in 30 days. You can't be serious. Dead serious. I have all the paperwork, properly notarized and legally binding. I sat down in the chair across from his desk and pulled out the loan documents. This is insane, Danny. I can't pay you back any more than I could pay Vincent. Then you'll lose everything, just like you would have with him. But at least this way, Sarah and the kids are safe. Marcus sank into his chair, his head in his hands. Why are you doing this to me? I'm not doing this to you. I'm cleaning up the mess you made when you forged Dad's signature and stole my inheritance. So this is revenge. This is justice. You made choices, Marcus. Bad choices that put your family in danger and destroyed Dad's trust. Now you live with the consequences. But I'm your brother, the same brother who forged our father's will, who stole $2.4 million, who put his wife and children at risk to cover gambling debts. Marcus looked up at me with something like hatred in his eyes. You've always resented me, haven't you? Always been jealous that Dad and Mom favored me. I was never jealous of you, Marcus. I was disappointed by you. And now I'm holding you accountable. What if I refuse to pay? Then you'll face the same consequences Vincent would have imposed, except they'll come from someone who knows all your weaknesses and has unlimited patience. Marcus stood up abruptly. This conversation is over. I'm not agreeing to any loan terms with you. You already agreed, I said, sliding another document across his desk. This is a copy of your original agreement with Vincent Torino. Notice the clause about debt transfer and assignment of obligation. Marcus read the document, his face going pale. This says the debt can be transferred to any third party at the creditor's discretion. That's right. Vincent transferred it to me yesterday. Legally, you've owed me this money since noon. This is illegal. You can't just buy someone's debt without their consent. Actually, I can. It happens every day in the financial industry. Credit card companies, mortgage lenders, they all sell debts to collection agencies. I'm calling my lawyer. You are a lawyer, Marcus, and a pretty good one. When you're not too busy gambling, you know this is legal. Marcus sat back down, defeated. What do you want from me? I want you to understand that actions have consequences. I want you to get help for your gambling problem. And I want you to start making payments on what you owe me. And if I can't make the payments, then we'll discuss collateral. Your house, your practice, your car. Whatever it takes to satisfy the debt. You'd really take my house. Make your own nieces and nephews homeless. I'd rather not, but you're the one who put them at risk, not me. Marcus was quiet for a long moment. Finally he asked, what are the payment terms? $5,000 a month, minimum. More if you can manage it. The debt will be satisfied in full when you've paid back the principal plus accrued interest. At $5,000 a month, that would take me over 8 years to pay off. Then you better hope your law practice picks up. Or find another source of income that doesn't involve cards or dice. I stood up to leave. Marcus called after me. Danny, what happened to us? We used to be brothers. I turned back to him. We used to be a lot of things, Marcus. Then you decided money was more important than family. That gambling was more important than your wife and children. That stealing was easier than earning. So that's it. We're enemies now. We're creditor and debtor now. Whether we're anything else depends entirely on the choices you make going forward. I left his office feeling hollow but determined. The easy part was over. Now came the hard work of rebuilding what Marcus had destroyed, starting with his relationship with his own family. Sarah and the kids came back to Millfield that weekend. I met them at Lisa's house to drive them home. Is it really over? Sarah asked as we loaded the car. With Vincent Torino? Yes. With Marcus it's just beginning. I told her about the debt transfer, about the payment terms I'd set up. You're making him pay you back? She asked.
Every penny, plus interest. Sarah was quiet for most of the drive home. When we pulled into her driveway, she finally spoke. "Thank you, Danny, for everything. But mostly for not letting him off the hook. He's still your husband. He's still the father of my children. But he's not the man I married, and I can't keep pretending otherwise." "What does that mean?" "It means I'm filing for separation next week. The kids and I need space from his problems while he figures out how to fix them." "Sarah, I never meant for this to break up your marriage." "You didn't break up my marriage, Danny. Marcus did that all by himself." That evening I was back in Dad's workshop, reading his letter again. The words took on new meaning now that I understood the full scope of what he'd trusted me with. Sometimes the person who deserves something is the last person who'd ask for it. I hadn't asked for any of this. Not the inheritance, not the responsibility, not the burden of holding my brother accountable for his actions. But Dad had seen something in me that I was only beginning to understand myself. The phone rang. "Marcus," I answered. "What do you want?" "I want to know if there's any way to work this out. Some arrangement that doesn't involve me paying you back over the next decade." "There is one way." His voice brightened with hope. "What?" "Confess to the forgery, publicly. Make a statement to the press, to the police, to anyone who'll listen. Admit what you did and why you did it." "And then what?" "Then I'll consider reducing the debt by half." Marcus was quiet for a long time. "You want me to destroy my reputation, my career, everything I've built. You already destroyed those things when you forged Dad's signature. I'm just asking you to admit it." "I can't do that, Danny. It would mean losing my law license, possibly going to prison. Then you make your payments like everyone else who owes money." "But we're family." "Family doesn't steal from family, Marcus. Family doesn't put wives and children at risk to cover gambling debts. Family doesn't forge their father's last will and testament." The line went quiet for so long I thought he'd hung up. "Marcus, you still there?" "Yeah, I'm here. Look, I don't hate you. I'm disappointed, angry, and hurt, but I don't hate you. If you get help for the gambling, if you start making payments, if you prove you can be trusted again, maybe things can go back to something like normal. And if I can't, then you'll learn what Dad meant when he said actions have consequences." I hung up and sat in the quiet workshop, surrounded by the tools and memories of a man who'd built something lasting from nothing but determination and integrity. Tomorrow the real work would begin. Managing the rental properties, running the auto shop, dealing with Marcus's debt payments or lack thereof. It wasn't the life I'd planned, but it was the life Dad had prepared me for, and for the first time since this whole thing started, I felt ready for whatever came next. 6 months later, I was sitting in Dad's old office at the auto shop when Marcus walked in without knocking. He looked different, thinner, more tired, but somehow steadier than I'd seen him in years. His expensive suits had been replaced by simple khakis and button-down shirts. The desperation that had haunted his eyes was gone, replaced by something that looked almost like peace. "I've been going to meetings," he said without preamble. "Gamblers Anonymous. 3 times a week for 4 months now. Good for you. I also sold the BMW, used the money to make an extra payment on what I owe you." I looked up from the invoices I was reviewing. "How much?" "15,000, which brings my total payments to 38,000 so far." The math was right. Marcus had been making his monthly payments religiously, sometimes more than required. He'd also taken on weekend work preparing legal documents for other lawyers, adding an extra source of income. "Sarah filed for divorce last week," he said, sitting down across from me. "I'm sorry to hear that." "Don't be. It was the right thing to do. I destroyed our marriage long before you came along with loan agreements." "How are the kids handling it?" "Better than expected. They're living with Sarah in the apartment above the bookstore downtown. Simple place, but it's theirs. No mortgage hanging over their heads, no fear of losing it because their father made stupid choices."
Marcus pulled out an envelope and set it on the desk. Inside were receipts, bank statements, and a handwritten letter. "What's this?" "Full accounting of where I've been spending money since we made our arrangement. Rent, utilities, groceries, gas, child support and payments to you, nothing else. No restaurants, no entertainment, no unnecessary purchases. Why are you showing me this?" "Because I want you to understand that I'm serious about changing. This isn't just about paying off debt, it's about proving I can be trusted again." I flipped through the receipts. Everything was exactly as he'd described. Marcus was living like a monk, every dollar accounted for, every expense justified. "There's something else," he said. "I've been meeting with Detective Rivera, cooperating with the investigation into the forged will. That could cost you your law license. It probably will, but it's the right thing to do, and I'm tired of doing the wrong thing, because it's easier." The criminal case had been moving slowly through the system. Rivera had built a solid case, but Marcus's cooperation would make it airtight. It would also mean the end of his legal career. "Why now?" I asked. "Because I realized something in one of those meetings. The facilitator asked us to write letters to the people we'd hurt with our addiction. I started writing one to you, and I couldn't finish it. Not because I didn't know what to say, but because I knew words weren't enough." He stood up and walked to the window overlooking the shop floor. Dad's old mechanics was still there, plus 2 new guys I'd hired to handle the increased business. "You could have destroyed me completely, Danny. Turned me over to Vincent Torino, let him collect however he wanted. Instead, you found a way to hold me accountable while keeping Sarah and the kids safe. I did what Dad would have wanted." "No, you did what you thought was right. Dad might have handled it differently." "How do you think he would have handled it?" Marcus was quiet for a long moment. He would have been disappointed, but not surprised. "Dad knew I had problems with impulse control, even when we were kids. He just hoped I'd outgrow them." "Did you know about the real will before he died?" Marcus nodded slowly. "Not the details, but I suspected. The last time I visited him, he kept talking about making sure his legacy went to the right person. Said it wasn't always about blood, sometimes it was about character." "So you forged it anyway?" "I forged it because I was desperate and stupid and convinced myself that I deserved it more than you did. Classic addict thinking. The rules don't apply to me, my needs justify any action."
And now I understand that addiction isn't an excuse, it's an explanation. I still have to face the consequences of what I did. Marcus returned to his chair. "There's one more thing. I want to make a formal confession. Public statement, press conference, whatever it takes. Not because it'll reduce my debt to you, but because people should know the truth about what I did to Dad's memory. I studied my brother's face, looking for signs of manipulation or calculation. Instead, I saw something I hadn't seen since we were children. Honesty. Marcus, a public confession will destroy what's left of your reputation. You'll probably go to prison. I've already destroyed my reputation, and maybe I deserve prison. Either way, I can't move forward with my life until I've admitted publicly what I did privately." "What about your law practice?" "What practice? I have 3 clients left, and they're all charity cases I'm handling for free. My legal career ended the day I forged Dad's signature. Then what will you do?" "I don't know yet. Maybe I'll learn a trade. Maybe I'll go back to school for something else. Maybe I'll work construction with Jake. The point is, I'll figure it out without stealing or lying or putting other people at risk." We sat in silence for several minutes. Outside, I could hear the familiar sounds of the auto shop. Air wrenches, hydraulic lifts, the occasional curse word when something didn't cooperate. The sounds of honest work. "When do you want to make this confession?" I asked. "As soon as possible." Detective Rivera said he could arrange a press conference by the end of the week. "And you're sure about this?" "Danny, I haven't been sure about anything in years, but this feels right in a way that nothing has since Dad died." The press conference took place on a Thursday morning at the Millfield police station. Marcus had insisted on doing it properly, with cameras and reporters and an official statement. Detective Rivera stood beside him, along with the district attorney and Miss Walsh. I watched from the back of the room as my brother destroyed the last remnants of his old life. "My name is Marcus Hayes," he began, his voice steady and clear. "6 months ago I committed fraud by forging my late father's signature on his last will and testament. I did this to steal my brother's rightful inheritance and use it to cover gambling debts I had accumulated over 2 years of compulsive betting." The reporters scribbled notes and adjusted cameras. This wasn't the biggest story they'd ever covered, but it had all the elements people loved. Family betrayal, stolen money, addiction and consequences. Marcus continued for 10 minutes, detailing exactly what he'd done and why. He didn't minimize his actions or blame anyone else. He didn't ask for sympathy or understanding. He simply told the truth. When he finished, the reporters shouted questions. "Mr. Hayes, how much money did you steal?" "Approximately $2.4 million. Where is that money now?" "Returned to its rightful owner, my brother Daniel, along with control of our father's business interests." "Are you facing criminal charges?" "Yes, I expect to be sentenced to prison time, and I deserve whatever punishment the court decides." "What message do you have for other people struggling with gambling addiction?" "Get help before you hurt the people you love, and understand that addiction doesn't excuse the choices you make." "I chose to forge my father's signature. I chose to steal from my brother. The gambling problem explains why I felt desperate, but it doesn't justify what I did." After the press conference, Marcus found me in the parking lot. "How do you feel?" I asked. Terrified and relieved at the same time, like I finally told the truth about something important. The story made the local news that night and the regional papers the next morning. By the weekend, it had been picked up by several national outlets as a cautionary tale about gambling addiction and family betrayal. The response was mixed. Some people expressed sympathy for Marcus's addiction and praised his honesty in confessing. Others focused on the betrayal of family trust and called for harsh punishment. A few pointed out that public confession didn't undo the damage he'd caused. I found myself thrust into the spotlight as well. Reporters wanted to interview the brother who'd been betrayed, to get my perspective on forgiveness and justice and family loyalty. I mostly declined, but I did agree to one interview with a local reporter who'd covered Dad's auto shop over the years. "How do you feel about your brother's confession?" she asked. "Proud of him for finally telling the truth. Sad that it took this long and this much damage for him to get there." "Do you forgive him?" "I'm working on it." Forgiveness isn't something you do once and it's finished. It's something you choose to do every day, and some days are harder than others. "Will you continue to require him to pay back the money he owes you?" "Yes, not because I need the money, but because he needs to understand that actions have consequences. If I just forgave the debt, it would teach him that confession equals absolution, and that's not how real life works." "What would your father think about all of this?" "I think he'd be disappointed in Marcus, but proud of how we've all handled the aftermath." Dad believed in accountability and second chances, but not in letting people off the hook just because they're family. The criminal case moved quickly after Marcus's confession. He pled guilty to forgery and fraud charges and was sentenced to 18 months in minimum security prison. The judge noted his cooperation with authorities and public acceptance of responsibility, but stressed that crimes against family trust deserved punishment regardless of the circumstances. Marcus served 14 months, getting out early for good behavior. During his incarceration, he completed a vocational program in automotive repair and earned his certification as a mechanic. When he was released, I offered him a job at the auto shop. It felt strange having my brother work for me, especially doing the kind of manual labor he'd once looked down on. But Marcus approached the work with humility and determination that surprised everyone, including me.
He moved into a small apartment above Jake's construction office and continued making payments on his debt. He also continued attending Gamblers Anonymous meetings and started speaking at local high schools about the dangers of addiction. Sarah never remarried, but she and Marcus developed a careful friendship focused on co-parenting the twins. They had dinner together once a week, so the boys could spend time with their father. It wasn't the family they'd once been, but it was honest and functional in a way the old family never was. 2 years after the inheritance dispute began, I was reviewing quarterly reports for the rental properties when Miss Walsh called with unexpected news. "Daniel, I've been contacted by a law firm in Chicago. They represent someone who wants to buy out your entire real estate portfolio." "What kind of offer?" "Considerably more than the properties are worth individually. Someone wants them as a package deal." "Who's the buyer?" "That's the interesting part. It's a subsidiary of Vincent Torino's business interests. Apparently he's been watching what you've done with the properties, and he's impressed." I hadn't seen or heard from Vincent since our transaction 2 years earlier. The properties had been performing well under my management, and I'd made several improvements that increased their value. "What does he want with rental properties in Millfield?" "According to his representatives, he's looking to diversify into legitimate real estate investments. Small-town rental properties, with stable tenants and good management, are apparently attractive to someone looking to clean up their business interests." The offer was substantial, nearly double what the properties were worth on paper. It would allow me to pay off Marcus's remaining debt and still have enough left over to expand Dad's auto shop or pursue other investments. I thought about it for a week before making my decision. The day Marcus made his final debt payment, we met at the auto shop after hours. 4 years and 2 months after stealing my inheritance, he'd paid back every penny plus interest. He handed me the final check, his hands steady and used from honest work. "How does it feel?" I asked. "Like I can finally look at myself in the mirror," he said. "Like I can visit Dad's grave without feeling ashamed." "What's next for you?" "I've been saving money for a down payment on a small house. Nothing fancy, just a place where the kids can stay when they visit. Sarah thinks it's a good idea, and the gambling, gone. Not because I have willpower, but because I understand now what it cost me. The money was the least of it. I lost my family's trust, my self-respect, and nearly destroyed the people I love most." Marcus looked around the auto shop, at the tools and equipment that had been our father's pride. "You could have sold this place and lived off the rental income," he said. "Why did you keep it running?" "Because Dad didn't build a real estate portfolio. He built a business that employed people and served the community. The money was just a byproduct of doing something useful, and you wanted to honor that. I wanted to understand it. Turns out there's a difference between having money and earning it." We locked up the shop together and walked to our cars. At the curb, Marcus stopped. "Danny, I know I can never really make up for what I did. But I want you to know that these past 4 years, watching you manage everything Dad left behind, it's taught me what integrity actually looks like." "You always knew what integrity looked like, Marcus. You just chose other things for a while, and what made you choose differently?" I thought about that for a moment. Dad's letter, maybe. Or maybe it was just realizing that being trusted with something important means you have to be worthy of that trust. "Do you think he'd be proud of how we handled this?" "I think he'd be proud that we both learned something from it." 5 years later, I was sitting in the same office where this whole story began, reading a letter from Tommy, one of Marcus's twin sons. He was 13 now, and working on a school project about family history. "Uncle Danny," he wrote, "Dad told us about the problems he had, and how you helped him fix them. My teacher says that's called accountability. Dad also said you could have made things really bad for him, but you chose to help him get better instead. I think Grandpa would be proud of both of you." The letter made me smile. Tommy was right about accountability, and maybe about Grandpa being proud too. The auto shop was thriving. We'd expanded to include a full-service tire center and had just hired our 8th mechanic. The rental properties I'd kept were all occupied with long-term tenants who'd become more like neighbors than customers. Marcus had bought his small house and was dating a woman named Carol who worked at the library. She knew his whole story and didn't seem to care about his past mistakes, only about the man he'd become since making them. Sarah had gone back to school and become a teacher. She and Marcus had found their way to a friendship that worked for their children, even if it wasn't a marriage anymore. And me, I'd learned that inheritance isn't just about money or property. It's about values and responsibility, and the choice to do right even when doing wrong would be easier. Dad had left me more than $2.4 million. He'd left me the opportunity to discover who I was when everything I thought I knew was stripped away. He'd left me the chance to choose character over comfort, integrity over ease. Most importantly, he'd left me the understanding that sometimes the greatest gift you can give someone isn't forgiveness for their mistakes, but the chance to earn back their own self-respect. The business was closing for the day. I turned off the lights in Dad's old office and locked the door behind me. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new decisions, new opportunities to prove worthy of the trust that had been placed in me. But tonight, I was going home to a house I'd bought with money I'd earned, to have dinner with friends I'd chosen, to live a life I'd built on a foundation of honesty and hard work. It wasn't the life I'd planned when I answered Miss Walsh's phone call 5 years ago, but it was the life Dad had prepared me for, whether he knew it or not, and that made all the difference. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.